The crystalline spires of the Galactic Dominion's central assessment chamber pierced the violet sky of Nexus Prime, their surfaces reflecting the light of 3 setting suns. Inside, High Assessor Varric Matrix adjusted his cybernetic sensory arrays as he prepared to deliver his report on humanity to the Dominion Council. Esteemed council members, Varric's synthesized voice resonated through the chamber. I present my findings on species designation Earth Sol 3, known locally as humans. Holographic displays materialized around the circular chamber, showing images of Earth's cities, vehicles, and military forces. As you can see, he continued, manipulating the displays with practiced gestures, they exhibit typical characteristics of a pre-unified species. Their planetary surface remains divided into nation-states. They rely heavily on combustion technology, and their space presence is limited to their immediate orbital sphere. Council leader Zara Nexus, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with interest, leaned forward. Yet they've achieved nuclear capability and rudimentary spaceflight. Curious combination. Indeed, Varric agreed, but their development appears stagnant. They've maintained roughly the same technological level for nearly a century. Our analysis suggests they've reached a plateau typical of species requiring guidance. What the Dominion couldn't see was the truth behind Earth's carefully constructed facade. Deep beneath the Antarctic ice, in a facility known as Operation Masquerade Control, General Sarah Chen watched the Dominion's assessment in real time through quantum surveillance technology that supposedly wouldn't be invented for another 1,000 years. They're buying it, she murmured to her second-in-command, Colonel James Rodriguez. The massive command center hummed with activity as operators monitored Earth's global defense network, carefully hidden from the Dominion's most advanced scanners. Maintaining our technological camouflage is getting harder, Rodriguez noted, gesturing to a holographic display showing the locations of cloaked defense platforms throughout the solar system. The Mars colony almost had a containment breach last week. We only need to maintain the deception a little longer, Chen replied, her eyes fixed on the feed from the Dominion Council chamber. Let them classify us as they wish. It makes their eventual surprise all the more satisfying. Back in the assessment chamber, Varric was concluding his presentation. Based on our criteria, I recommend classifying humanity as a Category D civilization, suitable for resource exploitation and potential forced advancement under Dominion guidance. The council members nodded in agreement, their various forms displaying signs of satisfaction. None of them noticed the subtle quantum fluctuations in their chamber security systems, as every word was recorded and analyzed by Earth's hidden observation protocols. How do you recommend we proceed? Council leader Nexus asked, her bioluminescence shifting to formal patterns. Standard procedure for Category D species, Varric responded. We send in a small fleet to demonstrate our superiority, demand their surrender, and begin the integration process. Their military capabilities are negligible. Our analysis suggests their most advanced weapons wouldn't even scratch our lowest-grade shields. In Antarctica, General Chen allowed herself a small smile. Negligible military capabilities, she repeated softly. If they only knew about the quantum defense grid, or the phase shield network, or the fact that half their detailed scans of Earth were actually seeing what we wanted them to see. Should we inform the other commands to maintain status? Rodriguez asked, already knowing the answer. Absolutely, Chen confirmed. Let the Dominion come with their small fleet. Let them think they're dealing with a primitive species barely worth their attention. When they cross the Kuiper line, they'll learn exactly how wrong their assessment was. The Dominion Council voted unanimously to approve Varric's recommendation, their decision sealed with quantum signatures that were immediately intercepted and decoded by Earth's hidden systems. As the council members filed out of the chamber, congratulating themselves on another efficient assessment, humanity's real technological capabilities remained perfectly concealed, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. In orbit around Jupiter, masked by advanced holographic technology, Earth's first strike fleet conducted silent drills. their quantum-powered ships moving through formations that would have shocked the Dominion's military experts. Humanity had learned long ago that appearing weak while being strong was the greatest tactical advantage of all. The stage was set. The Dominion would come, expecting to find a primitive species ready for conquest. What they would actually find would change the balance of power in the galaxy. The Dominion's 47th Integration Fleet emerged from quantum space at the edge of the solar system, their sleek vessels arranged in the traditional conquest formation. Fleet Commander Axis 4 stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Inevitable Destiny, his metallic scales gleaming under the bridge lights as he observed the primitive system before him. "Status report," he commanded, his cybernetically enhanced voice carrying the weight of countless successful conquests. "All ships report ready, Commander," his first officer, Sub-Commander Nix, responded. Her crystalline form sparkled as she manipulated the holographic displays. "Our scanners detect minimal defensive installations, primarily concentrated in low Earth orbit. No significant threats detected." Vor allowed himself a moment of contempt. Typical Category D civilization. They don't even maintain proper orbital defense networks. Begin standard intimidation approach. Let's show them what real space power looks like. The integration fleet moved forward, their quantum drives humming with enough power to level continents. As they passed Neptune's orbit, none of their sensors detected the quantum pulse that rippled through Earth's hidden defense network. In the Antarctic Command Center, General Chen watched the Dominion fleet's approach on their TrueSight displays. "They're right on schedule," she noted, then activated the Global Command Channel. "All stations, Operation Masquerade is now entering Phase 2. Maintain emissions control but begin power-up sequences. Remember, we only get one chance at this." Throughout the solar system, humanity's hidden forces stirred to life. Within the asteroid belt, what appeared to be ordinary rocks began generating quantum fields. Beneath the surfaces of Mars and Venus, massive weapon platforms awakened. And in deep space, countless stealth satellites oriented themselves toward the approaching fleet. Commander Vor was discussing surrender terms with his staff when the first anomaly appeared on their sensors. "Commander," Nix called out, her crystalline form vibrating with confusion. "I'm detecting some unusual energy readings from the asteroid belt." "Probably primitive mining operations," Vor dismissed. "Nothing that could possibly." His words were cut short as space itself seemed to shift around his fleet. Where moments before there had been empty void, now massive structures shimmered into view. Defense platforms larger than their biggest ships emerged from quantum shadows, their weapon ports already open and charged. "Impossible," Vor whispered, his scales paling. "Their technological level, they couldn't possibly." "Dominion fleet," a calm human voice echoed through their communication systems, bypassing their most sophisticated encryption as if it didn't exist. "This is Admiral Helena Reyes of the Earth Defense Force. You have entered restricted space. Power down your systems immediately." Vor's training took over, pushing aside his shock. "This is some kind of trick," he snarled. "Launch fighters. Show these primitives what happens when they dare to challenge the Dominion." Fighters poured from the Dominion ships, their energy weapons charging. They made it exactly 3 seconds before the true extent of humanity's deception became clear. Quantum phase beams lanced out from the revealed defense platforms, cutting through the Dominion's supposedly impenetrable shields as if they were tissue paper. "How?" Nix screamed as fighters began disappearing from their tactical displays. "Their weapons, they're using technology we thought was theoretical." In the Antarctic Command Center, General Chen watched the battle unfold. Admiral Reyes, she commanded through their quantum-linked communications, "Execute containment protocol. We don't want any of them escaping to warn the Dominion Council." The space around the Dominion fleet suddenly crystallized with quantum energy fields, trapping them in a pocket of manipulated spacetime. Vor watched in horror as his ship's quantum drives failed to engage, their escape routes cut off by technology that shouldn't exist. "This is impossible," he repeated, watching more of his ships fall to the humans' advanced weapons. They're supposed to be primitive. They're supposed to be. A word of advice, Commander. Admiral Raya's voice came through again, almost gentle this time. Never trust appearances. Humanity learned long ago that the best defense is letting your enemies underestimate you. Now shall we discuss your surrender? As the remaining Dominion ships powered down their systems, their crews realizing the futility of resistance, humanity's true technological capabilities stood revealed. The facade of a primitive civilization had served its purpose, drawing in the Dominion's fleet like moths to a flame. In orbit around Earth, cloaking fields dropped to reveal massive shipyards that had been hidden in plain sight for decades. Quantum communication relays activated across the solar system, coordinating humanity's forces as they secured their prisoners and prepared for the next phase of their plan. The Dominion had come expecting to find an easy conquest. Instead, they had walked into a trap centuries in the making, sprung by a civilization that had learned the value of patience and deception. As Commander Vor was led away from his ship's bridge, he finally understood the truth. Humanity hadn't been stagnating. They had been waiting. The Dominion Council chamber erupted into chaos as the emergency quantum transmission cut off mid-sentence. High Assessor Varick's final words still echoed through the room. They knew. All this time, they knew. Council Leader Nexus's bioluminescent patterns flashed with alarm as she processed the implications. The entire 47th Integration Fleet, over 30 of their most advanced vessels, had been captured or destroyed by a supposedly primitive species. Even worse, the humans had somehow prevented any quantum transmissions from escaping their solar system until they chose to send one themselves. Impossible, she whispered, her patterns dimming with shock. Their technological level. We monitored them for decades. They wanted us to monitor them. A new voice echoed through the chamber, causing every council member to freeze. The holographic displays suddenly activated, showing a human woman in a military uniform. I'm General Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. We've been expecting this conversation. Before any council member could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the Dominion's capital world. On every display, red warning indicators bloomed as quantum signatures appeared simultaneously across Dominion space. While you were focused on our solar system, Chen continued, her voice carrying no trace of emotion, Operation Shadowfall commenced. Right now, human strike forces are engaging critical Dominion military installations across 27 star systems. In orbit around the Dominion's primary shipyards, stealth vessels that had been hiding for months suddenly revealed themselves. The Dominion's most sophisticated detection systems hadn't even registered their presence until they chose to be seen. Commander Elena Santos, leading the Earth Strike Force, gave the order that would change the galaxy forever. All ships, execute Pattern Omega. Show them what humanity can really do. Quantum phase torpedoes launched from the human vessels, passing through the shipyard shields as if they didn't exist. The massive construction facilities, pride of the Dominion's military-industrial complex, began breaking apart as carefully targeted strikes severed key structural points. Similar scenes played out across Dominion space. Defense stations discovered their quantum communication networks had been compromised months ago. Military bases found their weapon systems suddenly unresponsive, their command protocols rewritten by infiltration programs that had laid dormant in their systems. In the council chamber, the displays showed the systematic dismantling of the Dominion's military infrastructure. How? Council member Thrix demanded, his crystalline form cracking with stress. How did you achieve this level of technology without us noticing? We never stopped advancing, Chen explained, allowing a small smile. We simply made sure you saw what you expected to see. Those primitive satellites you monitored. Decoys. The fossil fuel infrastructure. A carefully maintained facade. Every piece of technology you observed was specifically designed to reinforce your prejudices about our capabilities. On the mineral-rich world of Nexus IV, Dominion mining operations ground to a halt as human forces emerged from quantum shadows. Captain Marcus Wong's strike team had spent weeks mapping the facility's weaknesses while remaining completely undetected. "All that time you spent classifying us as primitive," Wong transmitted to the facility's commanders. "We spent studying your weaknesses. Your quantum communications have a fundamental flaw, one we discovered and exploited years ago." The Dominion's response fleets found themselves unable to coordinate effectively. Their quantum networks, thought to be unbreakable, had been compromised at a level so fundamental that every attempt to organize a defense only gave the humans more targets. Back in the council chamber, General Chen's hologram watched the Dominion leaders as they witnessed their military superiority evaporate. "You should have looked closer," she continued. "Those wars you dismissed as primitive conflicts over resources. Training exercises designed to mask our true capabilities. The nuclear weapons you thought were our peak achievement. Technology we kept visible precisely because it was outdated." Council leader Nexus, her bioluminescence now barely visible, finally found her voice. "What do you want?" "What we've always wanted," Chen replied. "Peace. Security. The right to develop without interference. You assumed our technological development was stagnant because we weren't constantly showing it off. In reality, we had simply learned that true power lies in knowing when not to reveal your strength." Across Dominion space, the coordinated human strikes continued with mechanical precision. Each target had been chosen years in advance, each attack choreographed to maximize impact while minimizing casualties. This wasn't just a military operation. It was the culmination of a strategy decades in the making. "Your civilization spans thousands of worlds," Chen acknowledged. "We can't possibly occupy that much territory, but we don't need to. Right now, we're destroying your ability to project military power. Your quantum communication networks are compromised. Your shipyards are being dismantled. Your command and control infrastructure is being systematically eliminated." The council members watched in stunned silence as their mighty civilization's military backbone was broken with surgical precision by a species they had dismissed as barely worth noticing. The humans hadn't just prepared for this conflict, they had shaped its entire context from the beginning. "We'll be in touch to discuss terms," Chen concluded. "I suggest you spend the intervening time re-evaluating your assumptions about primitive species." The hologram disappeared, leaving the Dominion Council to contemplate how completely they had been outmaneuvered by the very civilization they had come to conquer. Supreme Admiral Kharketh stood before the Emergency War Council, his metallic exoskeleton dulled with stress as he delivered the report no one wanted to hear. The holographic displays behind him showed the systematic collapse of the Dominion's military infrastructure across multiple sectors. "In the past 72 hours, he stated, his voice modulator unable to hide his exhaustion, "we have lost contact with 60% of our major military installations. The humans' attacks continue with precision we've never encountered before. Our remaining forces cannot coordinate effectively due to the quantum network compromise." High Marshal Vex slammed his crystalline appendage against the council table. "Then abandon the quantum networks. Revert to primitive communication methods if we must. We cannot allow these upstarts to dismantle the greatest civilization in known space." "We've tried," Kharketh replied. "But the humans predicted that response. They've seeded our entire territory with quantum interference devices. Any attempt to establish new communication channels is detected and disrupted before we can coordinate our forces." In Earth's orbital command center, Admiral Helena Reyes watched the Dominion's desperate attempts to regain control of their military assets. The massive holographic display showed hundreds of human strike forces executing their missions with clockwork precision. "Status report," she commanded. Colonel Sarah Martinez, her tactical officer, manipulated the quantum interface. "Phase 3 is proceeding ahead of schedule, Admiral. The Dominion's attempts to establish alternate communication channels are being neutralized. Their remaining fleet formations are isolated and unable to support each other. And the civilian populations, untouched as planned. Our strikes remain focused on military targets only. Several Dominion worlds have already begun broadcasting surrender signals on all frequencies. Deep in Dominion space, Captain David Chen's stealth cruiser, the Silent Thunder, emerged from quantum shadow near one of the few remaining major fleet bases. His crew had spent months studying this installation's patterns, waiting for this moment. "Target their command and control nodes," he ordered. "Remember, minimal casualties. We're here to disable, not destroy." The Silent Thunder's quantum phase beams lanced out with surgical precision, cutting through the base's defensive screens like they weren't there. Key communication arrays, weapon systems, and power generators were systematically disabled while leaving residential areas completely untouched. Back in the Dominion War Council, Supreme Admiral Sarketh's report grew even grimmer. "The humans are not just defeating us militarily," he explained. "They're systematically dismantling our ability to wage war at all. Their targeting is precise. They're destroying our military capabilities while deliberately avoiding civilian casualties." "How?" demanded Council Leader Nexus, her bioluminescence patterns showing clear signs of distress. "How could they have planned this so perfectly?" "Because we gave them time," Sarketh replied. "All those years we spent watching them, thinking we were studying a primitive species. They were studying us, learning our weaknesses, preparing for this exact scenario." In orbit around one of the Dominion's primary military academies, Commander Sarah Wong's strike team completed their mission without firing a single shot. They had simply activated the dormant quantum viruses they'd planted in the Academy's systems months ago, shutting down every military system while leaving educational and civilian infrastructure untouched. "This is exactly why we maintained the deception for so long," she transmitted to her team. "They never thought to guard against infiltration by a primitive species. Their arrogance became our greatest advantage." The Dominion's response grew increasingly desperate. They launched their remaining dreadnoughts, planet killer vessels that had never known defeat, only to watch in horror as human quantum torpedoes bypassed their strongest shields, precisely targeting their weapon systems and drive cores. In the Antarctic Command Center, General Chen received the latest updates with grim satisfaction. "Send the next message to their council," she ordered. Throughout Dominion space, on every surviving communication channel, her words echoed. "Your military infrastructure is now 70% neutralized. Your fleets are isolated and unable to support each other. We can continue this systematic dismantling of your war-making capabilities, or you can accept the inevitable. The choice is yours." The message was followed by detailed scans showing human strike forces positioned near every remaining major military installation in Dominion space. The implied threat was clear. Resistance would only result in the complete elimination of their military power. Supreme Admiral Sarketh looked at the War Council, his metallic features set in grim resignation. "We have no choice," he stated. "The humans haven't just defeated our forces. They've rendered our entire military doctrine obsolete. They could have destroyed us completely, but they chose precision over devastation. That alone proves they're far more advanced than we ever imagined." As the Dominion War Council debated their response, human forces maintained their positions, their quantum-shielded ships invisible to all but the most advanced sensors. They had spent decades preparing for this confrontation, and now, in less than a week, they had broken the military power of the galaxy's greatest civilization without a single civilian casualty. The age of Dominion supremacy was over, brought down not by brute force, but by patience, preparation, and the careful exploitation of their own arrogance. The Grand Conference Hall on Luna Station hummed with tension as representatives from across the galaxy gathered for the signing of the Sol Accords. Through the vast transparent quantum crystal dome, Earth hung like a blue jewel against the black of space, a stark reminder of how appearances could be deceiving. General Sarah Chen stood at the primary podium, her dress uniform gleaming under the artificial lights. Before her sat the assembled representatives of the former Dominion worlds, along with delegates from dozens of species previously classified as primitive by Dominion standards. 1 month ago, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. We revealed ourselves to the galaxy. Today, we gather to ensure such deceptions will never be necessary again. In the front row, former council leader Nexus's bioluminescent patterns showed a complex mix of emotion. The past month had transformed the galaxy's political landscape more dramatically than the previous 1,000 years combined. The Sol Accords, Chen continued, establish a new framework for interstellar relations. No longer will technological advancement be the sole measure of a civilization's worth. No longer will any species have the right to dominate another based on perceived superiority. On screens throughout the chamber, footage played showing human ships helping to rebuild the Dominion's civilian infrastructure. The same precision that had allowed humanity to dismantle their military capabilities was now being used to improve transportation and communication systems for peaceful purposes. Admiral Helena Reyes, standing near the Earth delegation, watched with satisfaction as former enemies sat together, discussing future cooperation. Her tactical officers had already begun sharing defensive technologies with worlds that had previously been vulnerable to Dominion exploitation. We maintained our deception for decades, Chen acknowledged, not out of fear, but because we had seen the pattern of history. We watched as the Dominion classified, subjugated, and exploited species they deemed primitive. We knew that revealing our true capabilities too soon would only lead to conflict on a massive scale. In orbit around various former Dominion worlds, human quantum engineering teams worked alongside local scientists, teaching them about the flaws in their previous communication systems and helping to implement more secure networks. The same knowledge that had allowed humanity to penetrate their defenses was now being used to prevent such vulnerabilities in the future. But deception was never our final goal, Chen continued. Today marks the beginning of true cooperation. Our quantum technology, our phase shields, our stealth systems, all will be shared with those who wish to use them for peaceful development. Captain Marcus Wong, now serving as a technical advisor to several former Dominion worlds, sat among a group of alien scientists. They were discussing the principles behind human quantum masking technology, the same technology that had allowed humanity to hide their true capabilities for so long. The key, he explained, was understanding that advancement doesn't always mean showing off your capabilities. Sometimes, true progress means knowing when to wait, when to watch, and when to help others advance alongside you. Back in the conference hall, Chen's speech approached its conclusion. We chose to reveal ourselves through military action because it was the only language the Dominion's leadership would understand. But our true strength lies not in our weapons or our deception, but in our understanding that real power comes from lifting others up, not holding them down. The Sol Accords were comprehensive in their scope. They established new protocols for first contact situations, created frameworks for technological sharing and cooperation, and most importantly, abolished the hierarchical classification system that had allowed the Dominion to justify their exploitation of other species. Former Supreme Admiral Ktarketh, now serving as a liaison between former Dominion military forces and the new coalition, found himself nodding in agreement. We thought we were the pinnacle of civilization, he commented to Admiral Reyes. In reality, we had become stagnant in our superiority. Your deception forced us to confront our own arrogance. As the signing ceremony concluded, representatives from across the galaxy affixed their quantum signatures to the Accords. The new era would be built not on deception or dominance, but on cooperation and mutual respect. In the Antarctic Command Center, now serving as a training facility for delegations from other worlds, Colonel Rodriguez watched the ceremony with pride. The screens that had once monitored humanity's hidden defenses now showed collaborative projects across the galaxy. Was it worth it? A young alien delegate asked him, hiding your true nature for so long. Rodriguez smiled, gesturing to the displays showing former enemies working together. Look around, he replied. We didn't just change the balance of power. We changed the way the galaxy thinks about power itself. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in winning a war, but in changing why wars are fought in the first place. As the ceremony concluded, Earth's night side came into view through the quantum crystal dome, its cities gleaming like stars. Humanity had emerged from the shadows not just as a military power, but as a force for change in the galaxy. The deception was over, but its legacy would reshape civilization for generations to come.